Hello, everybody, and welcome to I Love UT with Trashellie, not sponsored by Yui Hirahara. I'm Ashley,
And I'm Elle.
and this is a little podcast that we host here in our unofficial I Love You Discord fan server.
If you're reading I Love You and the recent chapter left you blue, or feeling like it's too good to be true, we get together and share our theory, bend down and praise the almighty Quimchi. Come join us for tea with Trashellie.
Tonight, we are very excited to be back. We had every intention to be back a little sooner, but unfortunately, the universe told us no. So we do apologize for how late we are getting this episode to you guys. Before we get to that, though, we would like to once again remind everybody that now that we are in season 2 of the podcast, we finally have a little team working with us who are helping us with a lot of the behind the scenes elements of the podcast that hopefully help us improve our quality and get the podcast out to you guys a little bit faster. We have a dedicated editor who has been doing a fantastic job at increasing the quality. I hope you guys have noticed that we now have the rolling chat showing as the recording goes. And she's doing a really great job pulling in screen caps when she can. She's doing a really great job of pulling parts of the chat out as we're discussing them. And I really hope that this helps you guys as you're listening, because I know visuals really help a lot. Ideally, we would still really love to one day be able to have somebody help with closed captions, because we do understand the automated captions. They suck, we know. Um, Unfortunately, we don't currently have the budget for that. We do pay our editor, we do pay our artist, we do pay everyone who's helping out. So once again, if you would like to help support our podcast, please consider donating to our coffee, which you will find linked in the description. With that, let's get into this episode. We are going to be discussing episode 262. And like I said, we are very, very excited about this. Um, if there's one thing that gets Trashellie very excited to discuss an episode, it is apparently Ressa and just the family reveals, honestly. I think if you've learned anything about us in all of this time, it is that we genuinely enjoy getting those family backgrounds and the answers to things that we have been questioning for so long. So, are you ready to dive in, Elle?
Absolutely.
Okay. Um, Obviously, I think the most important thing for diving into this is we're going to talk about Nessa and Rand and how we got so many answers to questions we had, and somehow even more questions because Kimchi is just so good at that. Um, where do you want to start, Elle?
I think let's just start with talking about Nessa and Rand's relationship because I feel like we got a lot more information about them than I expected to get at this point in time. I think that's kind of a consistent theme of this point that we're at with I Love You, where we've spent
Hmm.
so much time, theorizing and picking up the crumbs and guessing and waiting and waiting and waiting for the reveals, where now Kimchi is just giving us the information that we need in order to understand what's going on, and we're like, "Wait a minute, am I supposed to have this?" It's like, it feels like I'm
The
not supposed to have this yet.
the timing is so funny because I think this is where we were inevitably going, but it feels like she's rewarding us for the hiatus with, you guys were so patient and you waited so well. Here you go, answers to
Yeah,
everything.
right, and so I feel like as a fandom on the whole, we've always guessed that Nessa and Rand met when they were young, that they were together before he ever got with Yui, that they may have been married or they may have been like whether it was a legal marriage or not, like at least engaged, like they were some sort of true family. And then Rand got ambitious and he sold off his business and he got involved with the Hiraharas and they broke things off.
Mhm.
And I feel like meeting Rand and Nessa at that point in their lives, like, they were so much more, like, just, like, innocent kids than I
Mhm.
expected, where it's like n the way that Nana describes them, she's like, "My daughter was just this, like, down-to-earth country girl, and Rand was just this, like, orphan boy going off to university, and they crossed paths and just, like, mesmerized themselves into each other, and then the way that Nana was the one who basically pushed for the wedding, um,
Ah, Nana.
to avoid to avoid
To avoid
any
sin.
sin. Uh,
Listen, they clearly were, like, super into each other.
I
Let's
mean,
just give it to them.
I can't say that Nana was wrong, especially especially considering what we know about them later, how they just were never able to resist each other, but
Yeah. But
but,
also, you know what, Nana? Modern times.
yeah, maybe we maybe we don't need to get married at 16 to 18, but it's okay.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and, like,
But that's also the thing too, right? They got married.
they
Like,
did, they
we we didn't start really theorizing hard on marriage until, like, it was a more recent theory for us, and largely it had to do admittedly with an image shared on Patreon where, we were scrutinizing a dress and going, interesting, this kind of has vibes
well,
of a
there was before that, you had to be in a stream for it, but there was an image where Kimchi drew a little ring-a-ring and then went, "Wait, no, I have to erase that."
Oh, I don't know if I was there for that or not.
I don't think that you were,
Okay.
um, but that was the first thing that said to me that there was some sort of path to marriage, and I wasn't sure if they were actually married or if they were engaged and had to break it off.
Right.
And
See,
then
like, and especially like the rings would, be easy to
right,
confuse for that.
right.
Um,
And then once we got the dress image, it was like, "Oh, they were."
and the dress image was really important to us because that was when T realized, oh, divorce wasn't actually legal until, really recent times. Well, I say recent, but I guess it's not all that recent anymore.
And
But
that's part of the thing, and what we learn about Nessa through this is so sad, where she and Rand fall deeply, deeply in love. They're head over heels for each other, and they become this little family. Like, Nana's talking, and she's saying that Rand would always come home to them, and he was
mhm,
like her son, and they had her blessing, they got married, they were trying to start a family, and
showing up for his graduation,
right, and
that
then
image did things to me.
I know, and at first, everything's aligned, he's able to be at school, he comes home to them, they're planning their life together, and then we start to see the misalignment of their values come up,
Mhm.
where he is like, I need to build a stable enough foundation for myself and for you before we can start this life together. And poor Nessa is sitting there being like, I don't care what it is. I just want to be a part of your life. And he's like, no, I would never, he's like, I could never feel comfortable letting you live in squalor the way that I have to.
Right.
And
And it really
there
makes a lot of sense when you consider who each character is. It's very clear that Nessa has grown up without having much. So to her, this isn't all that different. Whereas Rand grew up also not having anything, but it's a matter of pride for him. He wants to be a provider. He wants to be a person who will never let anybody he cares about live the way that he did. He's doing it out of necessity because it is what is required for him to get to the point where he can provide. And, like, to some degree, while you may not agree with the fact that doing this means he's separated from her, you can kind of understand his angle. I think there's probably still a lot of people who are like, I feel like he should have been with her no matter what. But when you're looking at it from his side, you can understand why he wouldn't want to put her through that. And
And
equally why she would be like, I don't care about these things. Although, it's kind of different, right? Where it's like she still grew up in a comfortable home with
mhm.
Nana,
I was
where
about to
Rand was
say
living. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say, I feel like the biggest difference here is the fact that Rand was an orphan who aged out of the system, whereas Nessa was raised by Nana. So even though they both grew up not having much,
Hmm.
Nessa's experience of having little always came with someone who loves you and someone who's there for you and a sense of stability. And that makes it so much more bearable and it makes it comfortable. Whereas
Hmm.
Rand's experience of this kind of impoverished life was this like profound loneliness and lack of security.
And it is easy to think, oh, Nessa would have been happy just being there with him. It would have caused less strain on their marriage. But what if that wasn't the case? What if the version of I have nothing Rand had to offer was something that made it more difficult for them? I think these are very valid things that we should look at as we talk about the what ifs. And it's so easy to say this is what Rand should have done and this would have helped their relationship, but we don't always know how those things play out. Nana presents Nessa to us as this very humble girl, this salt of the earth girl. But this is Nana's perception of her daughter. And something that we see presented a lot in I Love You is that parents, and this is not just an I Love You thing, it's just what I Love You presents, but I think we all know and experience this with our own parents. Parents often have an image of their children. They have an idea of who their children are and what their children want and need in life. And that doesn't always line up with who that child is. She thinks that Nessa is this kind of person who would have been able to endure a certain situation. But that's not necessarily what would have been true. Like Leo says, it's also from Nana's point of view. She sees Nessa so hurt, but not the choices she made, which is, absolutely true. And we will definitely be getting into so much of that as we
Mhm.
discuss.
And something that I know the two of us have talked about so much with Nessa is that she is someone who obviously she haunts the narrative. We know her through these characters who long for her, who lost her, who yearn for her, who she means so much to. But we only know her through their memories. We only know her through their point of view, and we will realistically never know Nessa for who she actually is. We're only going to know her through the memories of people who cared about her and people who lost her and people who ultimately, for a good amount of them, did wrong by her. And we have to try to piece together from their point of views who Nessa really was when who she was is gone and unknown to us, truthfully.
This is what's making Nessa become a very favorite character of mine and pushing her to the top of my list is just the fact that, right, we only know her through the biased lens of those who knew her or interacted with her. We know that memories are not infallible. We know that we ourselves keep very fragmented versions of people in our memories. Like if I was to describe how I see and remember you, Elle, it would not capture the totality of who you are, and it certainly would not capture who you are inside. Like you said, we're never going to know her. Like unless there is a hidden journal anywhere, we're never going to have an idea of who Nessa really was and like how she made her thoughts and choices.
And this
And
is oh,
if it's oh, what's that?
you finish. I was gonna read something
Oh,
and
I
then
was
say
just gonna
something.
say, I think it just makes her so fascinating in that sense. She is the most unknown, like, we've always regarded Noel as, like, our most unknown character, I guess, because he's a character whose mind we're in the least. But no, it's Nessa. We're never
It's
going to
absolutely
be in her
Nessa.
mind. Like, she
And
literally haunts the narrative in the sense that she is literally a ghost of memories, and that's it. She's not even an actual ghost. She is a projection of how other people recall her.
And Leo said, "It kills me that we will never truly know her, but I love this about I Love You so much. How the story is told through the characters' point of views, but we can't get hers because she's dead." And this is something that I talked
Mhm.
about with Alyssa actually a while ago, how Alyssa's point of view is very purposefully withheld from us for basically all of the story to force us to try to learn who she is without being able to see through her eyes. And point of view is something that Kimchi really likes to play with, where she loves having different characters who you know more or who you know less based on just how much of the world you see through their eyes, and playing with your understanding of who they are and your sympathies towards them based on how
Mhm.
much you see versus how much you piece together. And like you said, like sometimes we think that certain characters are on the far end of that spectrum. Like I just said, I talk about it with Alyssa. We talk about it with Noel, even though we're starting to get more of his perspective now. But it will always be Nessa who represents basically that 0 point on the spectrum.
And I think a very interesting thing that we should note about this is that the characters whose perspectives we are withheld the most are characters who their perceptions are not who they are entirely. We see this a lot with Alyssa in the way that she's vilified by people because of how she's presented to us and how people take her at face value and assume that this is who she must be. We see this a lot in Noel and the fact that he was taken so much at face value as Youngie, but even as he starts to become more Noel to us, people were very resistant to the idea of accepting that Noel is a big faker and that he kind of uses people and that he has a darker side that people were not ready to see until he brought it full force into the open. We still see it with, trying to talk about those Noel and Yui parallels. And I think we have to acknowledge that this is probably the case with Nessa to some degree, is that she's presented by everybody as this strong pillar, as this very humble woman, as somebody who was kind and generous and all of these things. And I think we're supposed to know that obviously this is not the totality of who Nessa was, and that there was a lot more going on than we're shown. Um, can we guess what all it was? Maybe not entirely. I think this ties in a lot to previous episodes that we've yet to discuss, and how, Null can't fathom the possibility that maybe Nessa would have taken her own life. Whereas, for all we know, maybe Nessa was not the strong pillar that he remembers her as. Maybe she did have a lot of that darkness tied up inside of her that she was busy hiding away. Um,
And
I,
this
I I
is
think it's. Oh, go on.
oh, I was gonna say, and this is something that I think about a lot of the times in terms of in the little that Kimchi has said about Nessa. I always remember her saying that Nessa could be as cold as she could be warm. And through a lot of these characters' eyes, we see this very comforting, like you said, like strong pillar, this kind of nurturing woman who loved them all so much, which is true, but also we see that. And I think fandom has a tendency to kind of hold her up there as well, because again, those are the
Hmm.
memories of her that we get. But we also see that she endured so much hurt from the same people that she cared so much about, and she was dedicated and devoted and loyal, and she stayed by everyone, and she did what she felt like she had to do. But in some of the snippets that we do get of her, along with what Kimchi said, like we see and feel this bitterness and this sadness and this anger and this hurt through her from those same places where she she herself had more complex feelings and reactions to everything that she experienced than what we're kind of given in our perspective of her. And does this mean that she necessarily, you know, willingly of her own accord took her own life? We don't know. Obviously, there was likely foul play involved from,
Mhm.
the tea that Noel says changed her, which, giant red flag right there. But but regardless of what exactly her ending looked like, throughout her life, we do know that she carried a bitterness and a hurt and that she was genuinely cut deeply by a lot of what happened to her.
And to be fair, she deserves to be so bitter with everything she went through. I mean, like, I think I remember the very first moment that made me actually gasp because, I told you we'd already been, like, heavily theorizing the marriage thing. That didn't surprise me. It was the fertility issues that made me gasp because reading about the fact that they were trying for a family and it kept failing and she kept miscarrying, um, which I guess, like, I'm I'm not very versed on this, but, like, I guess that could be fertility issues, but, like, I don't wanna chalk that up to, like, entirely fertility issues
It
because
could
there's
be a number of
so many
things.
factors, right?
It
Like
could yeah,
stress, like,
it could
she
be
was
for
clearly under so much stress at the time, which
yeah,
would make it very difficult to keep a pregnancy if she's, like, stressed and anxious and depressed because, they're not in an ideal situation. But regardless, the fact that it was so difficult for her to conceive and keep a pregnancy and that we know he later asked her to abort Noel, I gasped at
and
that part.
it was the fact that, like, not only was it an ask for an abortion of Noel, it was that whole framing where it's,
Mhm.
"I've left you, my wife, who, like, we were deeply in love, your family took me in as their own, and
We
I
tried to have a
we
family and we
tried to have a
failed so
family
many
and we
times."
failed, and, I had these goals and I kept leaving you behind and telling you that eventually I'd bring you with me, and you waited for me, you stayed, you were loyal, and then I said, "This is the last time, just a little bit longer, and we'll be together, and we'll be a family, and we'll have
Ugh.
everything that we need." And then n not even not even a minute later, it's over. I'm found someone else, someone younger, someone more powerful, someone more successful, more affluent, and I am starting my new life here. And then he comes back to visit. Every time he does, you get swept up back in it because you still love this man and he is still your husband. And
Ugh.
and then one time after those years of not being able to start a family, you conceive and you have a pregnancy and it's sticking. And he tells you that you need to abort your family with him because he has to stay in the family that he built with somebody else that
And
he
he's
can't
gotta
honor. Oh,
go on. No, go
I was
on.
gonna say that
Finish.
he can't honor the promises that he made you when you 2 were both young because he has now created that with someone else, and you need to stay back alone on your own and give it all up.
And he's gotta go back to his son. Like, and the thing is, and we're going to get to this, but I do wanna preface, the thing is, I think it was not an easy ask of Rand to make. But that doesn't change what it meant for Nessa. That doesn't
Right,
change how much it hurt her and how she views it because Rand hasn't said anything to her. In her mind, he has thrown her away. He has created a whole new family. And now, when she's finally been able to give him what she thinks he wanted all along, he doesn't want it. And he's basically asked her to throw it in the trash. And that must hurt so much,
right,
it's
and, like, from Rand, we and one thing that, comes up in this chapter that we've kind of said with the point of views is like we're getting all of this through Nana. So
Mhm.
we're getting a little bit of an idealized version of Nessa. We're getting a little bit of Nana's bias in what choices should have been made and what hurt and what didn't. And we're getting a biased view of Rand too, because she is so angry with him. And as much as she loved him when they were younger, she hates this man now. And she is hurt because he hurt her daughter. So we have to assume that the perspective of what happened is biased through Nana's point of view. So when we look
Yes.
at what might have been going on for Rand, one of the things that we have also talked in the general chat about is the theory that at this time and when Rand gets together with Yui, it's not even necessarily something that he planned or really wanted, but that he probably went into selling this business very naively, got played by the Hiraharas, and as soon as he goes over to Asia, he gets exposed to this massive web of corruption beyond what he likely ever realized. Because also, again, he's climbing up really high in the corporate world really fast from the
Mhm.
perspective of an orphan, like an impoverished orphan who knew basically nothing of society, just trying to make a name for himself. So he's coming up in this like rags to riches thing and likely has no idea what he's stepping into. And then all of a sudden he's in the Hirahara Corporation at the top kind of levels. And so he likely witnessed things that maybe he wasn't supposed to. He realized that this is not a safe environment and he got caught up and trapped in this web. And he's probably doing that thing where he's making choices to protect the people that he loves in the only way that he thinks that he can without cluing them into any of it and hurting them tremendously in the process. So, did he, like you said, Ashley, this was probably a awfully hard ask for him too, because
Mhm.
I doubt that he actually wanted her to abort Noel and them to not be able to have a family and not be able to be with her. And that's part of he keeps running back to her too.
Mhm.
And he always runs back to her at home where the Hirahars aren't, where their reach doesn't extend.
Mhm.
He never brings her into that world with him because likely because it's not safe. But he never was able to let go of her. And so having to truly end it in that moment and say like this this is a degree that there's no coming back from this. There's no being safe if this happens. There's no way to protect you. We have to let go of this and realizing that that is the end. Their life together and their family, it's over. It can't be. It's not possible anymore. It's truly in the past. Had to be awful for him too. But then what Nessa hears is just that you're throwing me away. After all of
Mhm.
this, you've tossed me out like trash.
And it doesn't help that at this point Nessa has been back home with her mother who, as we said, she's very biased. She has a lot of thoughts about Rand. And I think it's very important to note that this is where the misalignment of their values comes heavily into play. So much of why Nana even hates Rand began long before Rand, had left, obviously. A lot of it has to do with what his values are compared to what Nana thinks people's values should be. Nana values humility and being humble and, having small goals. She finds Rand reaching for something big and grandeur to frankly be unnecessary. This is where the fact that they're both orphans is a very important thing because Nana, despite being an orphan, never really had those same lofty goals that Rand has. But we've discussed before that for Rand, somebody who aged out of the orphanage has come to recognize that the only way you can get anywhere is if you have money. And the more that he started to make it and the more that he started to become somebody, literally going from being a nobody who, he doesn't have a family, he doesn't have a family name, a family legacy. He's trying to build that for himself. Um, I know, like, a lot of people accuse him of, like, "You aimed for too much, he got greedy." But I think the problem is, at some point, it becomes really difficult to know when you've got enough. When do you call it stops? When you feel like everything's going your way, right? Obviously, Nessa did not have these same values, and this is where everything goes wrong because, ideally, and an ideal situation which nobody exists in and nobody follows, you know it would have been very great for them to have that moment where they realize we want very different things in life and this isn't working for us. But that's not how people in love work.
And there's
People in
also,
love
like,
always think love is going to be enough. We can make this work. He's going to make it and we'll finally be able to be together. And that was his plan. Like, I don't think that was Rand being greedy. He had an opportunity, and we're going to get
right,
into this later. I do think it was a trap, but he had an opportunity and he fully believed and fully saw that this was a way for him to finally be set with her and be able to provide the life that he wanted.
right,
And
and we see before that, like, as much as we're saying that, he did kind of leave her behind and she put her entire life on hold for him, which she did, there was a
he
point where
chose that.
she chose that, and there was a point where she was like, "I am tagging along. I'm going to
Mhm.
England with you. I'm going on these trips with you." And he did let her come.
Yeah.
Once he had what he felt like was enough for them both, she did start to join him in that life. And all of that, like, was all of that moving around and traveling and climbing up the ladder what she wanted? Truthfully, we don't know because again, this is through Nana's perspective. Um, but
But we can look at some of her letters as maybe an indication that, was she enjoying the travel? That was something that she probably never would have achieved without him, like going by their circumstances. Like
right,
some of her letters were talking about how like they're in a new country every month or something like that. Like
right,
she went to places that she never would have gone. Like, let's be honest, Nana was never going to take her to England. And understandably, like I'm not faulting for her that in the least. But, Nessa got to see things and expand her horizons far beyond what she might ever have been able to do because she chose to tag along with Rand and she chose to join him on his travels.
right. And the goal was for that to keep being what happened. And it just, when he went to Asia, that obviously we know that his fatal flaw was selling his company and
Mhm.
moving to Asia. But he had no way to know that at that time. And his genuine plan was to bring Nessa with him.
Right. And, again, too, like I think some of the things that colors Nana against him is the fact that she went to Asia with him. In her mind, Rand took Nessa away from her. Um, when I got married, my mother, like not to such a degree, but she also had like the difficulty with me moving away. And I went like across the country basically. For Nana, who doesn't really have other family, and this is the daughter that she raised on her own, the daughter she had with her husband who passed before he even ever found out that she was pregnant, it must it must be very difficult for her to, lose her daughter in that sense. Especially with her fears that she wouldn't get to see her. Um, so I feel like these are all elements that color Nana's bias against Rand. He doesn't support values that she favors. He isn't the kind of person that she thinks is a good and humble and, let's say, frankly, godly kind of man. He's taking her daughter away. He he's basically the antithesis to everything that Nana is. It doesn't matter if Nessa is actually happy with these experiences. Nana isn't happy, and that will always color her against Rand, I think.
Yes. And like you were saying about how far he took Nessa, there was it was one thing when he was potentially taking her into the city, but the problems with Nana's perception really started with him taking her to England, which, like you
Mhm.
said, Nana would have never taken her there because, you know, we have all of this huge the huge historical implications of the conflicts
Mhm.
between Ireland and England, but also Nana personally lost her husband to
Mhm.
England, and now Rand is taking her there and she's losing her daughter as well. And that's where it starts, and then it just keeps getting further and further away, and Nana is more and more alone.
And, like, I'm not going to say it's a good reason to outright hate Rand, but I think it is a valid reason to be very upset. you know Obviously it's something that she needed to work through, and she didn't, but that's just I love you for us. um it's just, it's one of those things where we can understand how and why Rand was colored that way in her vision, but it also, like we said, because it's such a biased view, it means we have to critique absolutely everything Nana relays to us, because it's coming through her bias of her own hatred towards Rand, her own feelings towards him. It means she sees everything he says and does in such a negative way. She can't possibly fathom that there was actually any positivity to the things that he was doing.
Right, and with Nana specifically, this is a little bit of a pivot, but I just wanna throw it in around here because 'cause we're talking about Nana's perspective. Um, she also something that I realized is that what she says to Shanae at the end, she has never processed any of this.
Mhm.
When Rand was taking Nessa in and out of her life, she was just sitting there thinking about, "Oh, my daughter is hurt, my daughter's being taken away, I'm lonely," but Nessa would always come back, and then they'd go
Mhm.
back to how they were, and then eventually Rand comes and it's Nessa's gone, and she doesn't have time to process that because she has to go and pick up the grandson that she didn't know that she had. The grandson that she kicked out her daughter over and never spoke to her again because of. And then
Mhm.
she has to devote all of herself to taking care of him. And sitting there, this is the first time that she's ever probably talked about this with anyone because she says that, she doesn't have many friends anymore. We see in the flashbacks that Nessa was really the most of what she had. And obviously Nessa's gone and now she's been in Asia since Nessa died, really. Um, so she not only is speaking through this biased lens, but she is speaking through profound grief that she has never processed because she's just been keeping her face for Noel and focusing on raising him this entire time.
I think that was a really hard part of the episode for me, because obviously when people realized that Nana kicked her out for having an abortion, or that's how we perceived it during the episode, there was a lot of hatred towards Nana for it, because how can you do that to your daughter? But when we look at it again, you know, I mean, even then, it was very clear that it was something that Nana regretted deeply, and that was largely part of why she treated Noel the way that she did. We could see the difference in how she treated him. It wasn't typical grandparent, spoils the grandchild in a way that they never would have spoiled their child kind of thing, right? It was very much Nana kind of repenting kind of deal.
Mhm.
Like, I know he needs help and I'm doing what I can this time to help. Um
Right.
but
She feels
getting to see her actual grief, like, does it rectify the choice that she made? Of course not. But it humanizes her, and I think that is, again, one of the important things that we get throughout I Love You over and over, is that people do shitty things. They make mistakes. They make the wrong choices. They do things in a throw of passion. They do things based on morals that maybe they come to change. They do things based on information they have at the time, etc., etc. People fuck up all the time, but it does not make you a terrible human if you learn from it and if you try to grow from it. Nana, she may not have gotten to process that grief, but she clearly learned from it. She clearly regretted it. Having that moment of like, it's the fact that Nana never bothered to look for her daughter because in her mind, she believed Nessa had gone back to Rand and that they were happily living together. She thought Nessa was happily with Rand because if she wasn't, why hadn't she come back? Because that's what
Right.
you're saying, Elle. Like, she always comes back. If she hasn't come back, she must be with that man. She's made her choice. She must be happy. They're rich now. They have their or she doesn't have a kid. They're rich now. She's got that happy life.
Or at
And then
least
to
she's
find
cared
out,
for.
right, and to find out that that entire time they were never together, that she kicked her out when she needed her the most, and that she died and she wasn't there for her and she couldn't oh no, here's happening, and she couldn't be there for her because of the choice she made. And like you said, she didn't even get to process it because next thing she knows, she's on a plane to a foreign country, a place she's never been, to go pick up the most broken child she's ever met in her life. And you're right, like even like Nana said, she wrote to friends all the time, but like that's not the kind of thing you're going to open up to people about. She didn't even intend to open up to Shanae about it.
Right, and she
Like
says
she told
herself that
Shanae,
she never processed it.
right, like she told Shanae to take her time in the bathroom because she wanted to cry and get it out before Shanae came back. And that like I remember when I was writing about the previous episodes, I thought it was very interesting that Nana's eyes were closed when she was saying something about, like happy to have you over anytime or something like that when Shanae came over. I was like, that is a very interesting thing for her to have her eyes closed about. I wonder what this is about. Clearly, it's about she was not in the mood to have people over, but she was doing what Nana does. She was masking and she was being the kindly Nana who was there for people when they need to have a talk, even though she wasn't in the place to have a talk. She was fragile. She was already falling apart. And then she sees her daughter's handwriting for the first time in years, and like that alone is difficult, but to see that photo that she probably never ever got to see, ugh,
And
of
it
of the baby that she thought was aborted, and she like
and it's like, part I know part of what we said is, like, she was always hoping that Nessa would come back and always had that little bit of thought in her mind of, if things aren't okay, she's gonna come home, and, she always comes home, we fight about her choices all the time, but she comes back, but it was different because Nana was the one who cast her out. She threw out all of her stuff, she called the police. Nessa was like, "I am not welcome back there," and
mhm,
Nana didn't look for her, and I think it it's bad no matter what, but
mhm.
in processing it, it's even worse with, like you said, Noel was alive. He he made it, and I think one of the things that comes in with the whole we will never get Nessa's perspective is we'll also never know what choice she actually made. We're never gonna know what actually
Mhm.
happened on that trip to Wales. We know that she told Nana that she had made up her mind and she was aborting it. We know that she told Rand that it was taken care of. And I think I can say this because it was supposed to be deleted scenes. Um,
Okay.
because it was gonna go into the comic and it only got deleted for time.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
Rand is under the impression that she did get the abortion and it just failed. and it
Yes.
was too late to change it. And so everyone
The wording about it was so interesting though, because it feels a little ambiguous. Like, when I read it, my gut instinct was, "Oh yeah, she got it and it failed." But then when I reread it, I was like, I guess you could also interpret this as it was too late and she couldn't get it. It was very
right,
interesting
like,
how it's written. Like, there's just no way for
there's no
us
way to know.
to know.
And it's like, was it that she, had that conviction and took the trip and what she said to Nana was originally true, and then she got there and she changed her mind? Was it that she got there and she did it and it didn't work? Was it that she got there and it was too late and she couldn't? Was it that
Mhm.
she told Rand the truth about one of these things? Was it that she lied to Rand because she changed her mind? We won't know. We're never gonna know. But all that Nana knows is that she cast Nessa out for that choice, and Noel is alive, and it's even worse if Nessa did decide to go back on it, because then she didn't even make the choice that Nana cast her out for. But no matter what, the thing that Nana was mad at her about, that she stubbornly never went to look for her as a result of, didn't even happen.
Mhm. And the sheer irony that she now is the one taking care of the child that she believed was being aborted because the daughter she kicked out is no longer here. Ugh. I get very upset about the Lochlainn women. Like,
It's
they
tragic.
they yeah, and it breaks my heart. It's, I this is I think this is why I feel so strongly that that Shanae and Simhan are going to foil them, because I don't think I can bear to have them repeat the same mistakes, or for Simhan to die before Shanae ever gets a chance to make up with him or something like that. It, like, one is bad enough. And like, especially with the way that we're experiencing it, like, I don't want to see it happen again. Um, Especially because we basically live Nana's grief and regret all the time, like in every single interaction she has with Null. And the trauma dumping on poor Shanae. Um, ugh. Um, I do want to kind of double back though to note that with all this said about Nessa, and especially like her connection with Rand, and how we do have this sense that they were very inseparable, and how despite knowing when things weren't quite working, she still always went back to him. I think it's really easy to see how she wound up in the United States of Asia, like regardless of which scenario led her there. Whether or not
Right.
she thought that there was a chance for them, whether or not it was straight up, I'm just doing this for Noel, whether or not it was, I'm not over you, but I know we can't have that family, so I'm still doing this for Noel. Just, ugh, it makes
Right.
it makes knowing it makes knowing that she ended up there in the first place all the worse, knowing that this is what literally leads to her death. And just thinking about how difficult it has to have been. Like, even if she was over him, that still has to have been hard. But especially if it was, as I'm starting to suspect, I'm not over you, but I know we can't have a relationship and it
Right.
has to be like this, but I still want
That's
you to have that relationship with Noel.
right. That's always been my guess, and I feel more and more like it's the case where, like, I don't think either of them ever actually got over
Mhm.
each other, but I think after that sunset event with the abortion, it was
Ugh.
very much like, clearly, the dream that we always had together and the life that we planned to live together isn't possible. It's not happening. It is a figment of the past, and we as much as we love each other, it's not going to work. We lead two separate lives now. But now that Noel's in the picture, it's like, here is the best version of family that we can have. Here's the version of family that's not what he deserves, but gets us closer to it. And as we see in those original letters, like, part of how she ends up in Asia seemingly is her saying, he's getting older and he asks about you, and it's getting harder and harder to dodge the questions. He wants to meet you. He wants to meet his father. He wants to know you. And we don't see any of her pining after him in that.
Mhm.
We still see connection between the two of them, but we don't see any active relationship like they used to have. But we see this, for the sake of Noel, we need to do something here. And that's likely how she gets lured in. It's all for Noel. And that's even more so, like, Nessa, from what we see, was just constantly putting her own life on hold for the people that
Mhm.
she cared about. And sometimes it was things that she wanted to do and things that she enjoyed, like with going Rand traveling. But it doesn't change that what she really wanted from her life was just always on hold for someone else.
And I feel like I'm trying to figure out the delicate way to phrase this, right? Because this is the thing about motherhood, right? And the thing that people tend to, what's the word I'm trying to say? Praise, I guess. It's like, oh, such sacrificial mothers and stuff. But it feels like Nessa lost so much of herself in all of this as a wife and as a mother, which isn't to say that I think either of these ruined her life. It's just that we can see how, as a wife, as this very loyal and dedicated wife, she was
She
living for Rand. Like,
she she didn't have the space to honor herself alongside her
yes,
family.
yes. Like, she was living for Rand, but what was she doing for herself? We don't really know at this time. Nana's depictions of her talk once again about, the negative Rand view. We don't learn what kinds of things Nessa was doing for herself. We know she was still helping out in the bike shop, but what about when they were abroad? Um, and likewise, when as a mother, as a single mother, she must have struggled so hard. And, again, like at that point, your identity is I'm mom. I need to be strong. I need to take care of him. I need to provide for him in all the ways that I possibly can, in all the ways that he needs. And I think it makes it that much more tragic that when she finally leaves to go introduce Noel to Rand, it was as far as we can tell, it was a lie. It was never Rand's doing. It was, a trap, and that those intentions weren't actually there. And, she uproots them all for Noel once again, all to find out that, you know, that's not what it was, that's not what she thought it was.
It's just, Nessa is so sad. It's like
She's
she
literally doomed by the narrative in all the
she
worst
is.
ways.
And she had so much life to live, and she had such a clear I think she had such a clear idea of what she wanted, and at
Mhm.
first, she was really in the position to get it, like, and I think that's what separates her from characters like, for example, Alyssa, who we say are also doomed by the
Mhm.
narrative, where the way that Alyssa's life was set up for her and the way that she was setting up her life were always at odds with her goals for how she wants to live. But with Nessa, she did set up exactly what she wanted. She grew up in Nana's shop. She learned her mechanic skills, and she figured out who she is as a person and what she enjoys. She met a man that she fell deeply in love with, and they got married, and they'd all be a family at Nana's house, and they planned to move in together as soon as he had was out of college and had a job, and they were gonna start a family, and that's all set up so well, and all of it was always just out of reach.
Um, Leo says that this is also why I think both Null and Nana are correct in how she died. And I agree. These are things that I feel like when we get to actually talking about these episodes, we will discuss in full. But I do want to say I do agree. I very much think, and I think we've probably talked about this before, that, our long-standing theory until we got even more of this information was that um, Nessa was probably drugged with something that played upon feelings that already existed in her. Like guilt for uprooting them and falling into this trap and coming here, and like especially if Noel was upset with her and stuff. Um, just like a general depression because like feeling like she had failed Noel in some way. And now that we have this extra insight and seeing, just how much she struggled in life and how, to Noel, her personality completely changed, right? Because it's all things that she was probably hiding from him and that she was burying down and that she was trying to hide away to be strong, much like, Nana has never been able to share her grief because she's so busy, or she's never been able to share or process her grief because she's so busy trying to be strong and keep face and, be this pillar that Noel needs, and
It's
then something snaps. I think for Nessa, that's probably, being drugged is probably something that brought these things that she was hiding and made them, brought them more to the surface, exacerbated them, like medications that say, you know, talk to your doctor if you have new or worsening signs of depression, those kinds of things. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
and it's that version of Nessa who always came home to Nana and cried her heart out after everything that
Mhm.
happened to her, who no
Yes.
longer had Nana to come home and cry to. So we know that she's someone who is capable of going on through all of that and, being strong through it, but those feelings would still have been there. And I definitely think that that dark place probably came out with the drugging, and there was not as much kind of stepping in front of it once she started being likely drugged with the tea.
Mhm.
Um, and, was it that she herself made that choice, or that she was kind of made suggestible to someone manipulating her to it? That much I don't know where I stand on
Mhm.
that, but I do think a lot of genuine feelings probably came out point.
And this, again, is why it's so important that we remember we don't know Nessa. We only know her through the eyes of people who recall her. And they recall her as she presented herself to them or the way that they hold her in their memory. Noel remembers Nessa as being like this sweet, nurturing, bright, strong mother because that's who she needed to be for him. She wanted she didn't want him to suffer. She didn't want him to ever have to feel bad for having less. And we see that. Like Noel's happiest memories are when he was a child. Like, before going to Korea, he didn't feel bad about the life that they had because of the kind of mother she was to him, which is why it's so difficult for him to grasp that the person she became when she started to drink the tea could possibly have been any part her. And like,
Mhm,
like Leo says, how both Noel and Nana are correct in how she died. Nana is correct about how, she probably carried a lot of this dark depression inside of her, but that doesn't mean that that was complete. like, we've talked, I don't think Nessa would have taken her life had she never been drugged. You know, it's as you said, it's very possible that it could have been something because she had become very suggestible and somebody could have, like whispered that to her kind of situation. It could have been that, somebody did do the deed and make it look like she did. And because she already had all of these signs of it, it would just be so easy to be like, oh, well, she was such a depressed woman. And, unfortunately, I'm not
Yeah.
surprised kind of deal.
She was
Um,
depressed, she was alone, she was an
mhm.
undocumented immigrant.
Yep. But, even if she did wind up doing it of her own accord, I don't think she ever would have done it had she not been drugged, which is why, yes,
No.
I agree, both Noel and Nana are correct. The drugging exacerbated whatever already existed, but it doesn't mean that Nana or that Nessa didn't have that darkness. And I say this again because I remember when the article about, the woman who was hung, the woman who was found hanging from the ceiling fan first came out, and we first started talking about this. There's a lot of like really interesting conversations about this because I think it has to be said, parents do commit suicide, even loving parents. Um, and I'm saying this again, full well having said, I don't think she would have done it had she not been drugged. But I don't like the narrative where people say, well, she had a child and she loved him, and I don't think she ever would have taken her life. It happens. People do that. Things get so difficult and your mind gets so dark.
And
Like
a lot
depression
of the
isn't logical. It's
right. And a lot of the time, the thought for people, this is a thought for everyone, but especially parents, is, if I'm in such a dark place, I'm not even being a parent, I'm not providing, they're probably better
mhm.
off without me anyway.
And like we know that's not true. But if you're in that place, you're not thinking that. Your brain is clouded by that darkness. Um and I think that's how a version of Nessa who is already depressed and full of regret and feels like she is gravely fucked up and is now being drugged by something that exacerbates her depression and makes it so much worse and, increases suicidal ideation could reach that kind of point. I do like to hope that maybe it was something that was staged with the effect of, like we said, oh, she was so depressed and she was so alone. But like we were saying earlier, Nessa is presented to us as somebody who is strong, somebody who is nurturing, somebody who is, like this humble woman, somebody who is very bright, etc., which makes me feel like we cannot ignore the possibility that she was a very depressed woman who, when drugged with the right kind of with the right kind of drugs, could be pushed into that kind of place.
Right. And I'd like to just highlight what Leo is saying here, where she says, first, she's not a bad mother for that. She's human. And then I don't like when people strip parents of their vulnerability when they're in their parenthood as though they just quit having individual struggles. It's a sad topic, but realistic.
Hmm. And when we think about it, like Nessa she wasn't like a very old person, and I think
She was so young.
exactly. She was so
And
young. She had
I know
already
that
struggled so much. She had no support system.
I know that
Like,
I've kind of worked out the timeline, vaguely as because we
mhm,
don't really get concrete dates with the chat, but I'll just say it here for anyone who hasn't seen that. Nessa, based on what's in the chapters and what Kimchi said, which she said is fine to share, um, based on when Nana's husband died, Nessa would have been born around, I think, 1973, if I remember correctly, which if she and Rand got married basically as soon as she was of age two, which I'm going with 18 here. It could technically have been 16 with Nana's consent, but I'm going to guess that she wanted it to be 18. Um, she would have been about 18 when they got married. And then Nana's timeline lasts about 5 years between the marriage and Rand leaving Nessa for Yui. So she is only about 23 when this marriage dissolves, and not much older than that when Noel is conceived. So throughout all of this, as much as we know that Nessa was older than Yui and she has these insecurities about being the older woman, she was so young throughout all of this.
And again, when you consider all of those struggles that she's gone through and then raising Noel all alone without a support system, and she winds up in this foreign country thinking, she can finally give this opportunity to her son. And, at some point realizes that it's a trap and that it wasn't the opportunity she thought it was. And she's got really no way to go back. Um, Again, it just, I feel like we cannot deny the possibility of her, actually taking her own life as exacerbated by medications.
Oh, and Remy Arla just said something,
Mm-hmm.
which that, and it looks incredibly likely that Noel ran away. So to her, in her last moment, she thought she failed all her relationships.
Yep. And I do feel that seems very strongly possible.
And it's like, again, regardless of whether she took her own life of her own volition or was kind of manipulated into it or it was staged, that hit so hard that no matter what, in those moments before she died, she had lost all of her relationships.
And like, when you're in that kind of place, sometimes you feel like you don't have any other options, but like you don't feel like you have anything worth living for when you feel like you've lost everything. We have really deviated, you guys.
Yeah, I'm like, how do we circle back to anything else from here?
I promise we will, we're going to be hitting a lot of the previous episodes as well. I definitely have ideas for these. Oh no, Leo.
The
Leo
chat's
says
crying.
she's crying.
We killed the chat.
We will definitely be revisiting these episodes because I think getting the looks into their pasts, especially Noel's past, is really worth us talking about. But as I said earlier, it's always the Ressa episodes that get us and we're like, we gotta do this
I
now.
know, there's just something about them. And Kimchi
It's
also
the
said that if she
tragedy.
it
We
is, and
love tragedy.
we do, and Kimchi herself even said that if she were to, like, do a spin-off on another character, it would be Rand.
I would be up for it, okay? Like, I know so many people hate him for his choices, but I am fascinated by him and the way that he, too, is very doomed by the narrative. Um, in fact, I think that is actually a very good segue for us
Oh, yes,
um,
there we go. That's how
to
we get
get
out of
back
it.
on track to Rand. Um, and again, to reiterate what I want to remind everyone, everything that we've seen in this episode is through an extremely biased lens. Um, if everything that we're seeing is coming through the lens of a woman who hated this man, who is hurt on her daughter's behalf, who doesn't have his explanations, and this is the important thing, right? It's not just that she hates this man, she doesn't have his explanations. She doesn't know his reasoning for any of his choices he's made. We must critique it. We must question what is left out, what she doesn't know. We have to ask ourselves, what is missing from this story? Because there's a lot that's missing, right? And this is what was really fun about reading the chat in real time as it came out, because the first thing you always get is going to be everybody's knee jerk reactions. And when I was in our Fast Pass channel, sidebar to all of our listeners who are not yet in the Discord, every Fast Pass episode, we make a nice little thread so that you can come join us and chat about the episode. Or if you are not a Fast Passer, you can go and read that episode when the episode comes out and you can see what people were talking about when it came out. Um, it was just really funny reading that and seeing like all these knee-jerk reactions and how like there were a lot of things getting kind of like glazed over initially in like very, very heated emotional aftermath. We've got people in the chat right now even saying, do I still want to shove him off a cliff? Absolutely. Oh, wait, no, that was secondary. Leo said, mind you, you can hate him while still seeing the complexity of his character and choices. His story is so interesting. Very true. And
And
then,
then
do I still want to shove him off a cliff? Absolutely. But give me the 30 episode backstory. Juliet has this fun little gif of somebody kicking somebody off of a cliff and says, me with Rand in the immediate aftermath of this episode. Don't worry, guys, Bombi caught him. um, yeah,
it's like, yeah, the initial gut reaction is to be like, Rand, how dare you? Especially
so
like you said,
much of the reactions were ran through Nessa away. He literally chose Yui over Nessa. He threw her away. And it's like, that's what we're getting.
right,
That's what
but
we're getting, huh?
right. But like we said, we're seeing this all through Nana's biased lens and without Rand's explanation. And I
Exactly.
think one of the big things that came out of this episode and potentially helps tie things together that we started talking about a little bit earlier is how Rand's company's acquisition to the Hiraharas plays into all of this.
Mhm.
And specifically,
How
his
the
kind
company
of
came to be honest.
how it did and his interactions with this Koichi that we get
Mhm.
very briefly name dropped.
But the name drop is so, so important. Koichi, I've found, is a name that can very easily be romanized just as Koichi. So the choice to use the Kou is very, very interesting, isn't it? Because where do we know this naming scheme, everybody? We have a Kotaro grandfather. We have a Kosuke grandson. And very interestingly, we have a Koichi who falls right in the generation in between the two. And it feels very much like that means not co-daddy. It feels very much like we have a naming scheme of heirs following this naming scheme, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
leads us to believe Koichi very likely could be a brother of Yui, which sets us up for a couple questions. But first, it feels like it has to be a brother because it sounds like the kind of thing where Kotaro's son would be Koichi. It would not be like a cousin because why would a child who is not Kotaro's take that Koichi name? Like, I'm not saying it's
Right, like
not possible, but it
right, but
doesn't
like
make
this is the
sense.
direct lineage, and
Yes.
Kimchi was a little reluctant to talk about him.
Yeah.
Um, which I just makes my brain go a little something something, but um, but yeah, but
There's that one comment I keep thinking about that's just like
yup,
driving me nuts.
yup,
Um, so
which yep. But yeah, but it gives the impression that this is likely Yui's brother.
so let's
And
say it is Yui's brother, right? That leaves us the question. If there's a male heir in the family, why is there a Mukoyoshi in the family?
mhm.
What happened to Koichi? Where is Koichi? Is he alive? Is he dead? Did he get murdered? Did Yui murder him? Did he befall some kind of horrible accident? Frankly, he would have been really young, so I don't think cardiac arrest or stroke would necessarily affect him quite as much unless he was older. However, I think, medical issues can always strike people differently, so that could be something. But as Remy Arlo pointed out, what if he's in prison?
Right, like we get, as we talked about in our Yui episode, episode 7, wow, that was so long ago.
Oh my gosh.
I know. That was our first, like, 4-hour night.
I like the complicated characters, okay?
Anyway, as we talked about in our Yui episode, we've always gotten the impression that Yui, we know that she's the youngest, and now she's in the position where she's on top, and we don't really hear anything about any of her other siblings. The most that we get is that we know that Hansuke's mother exists and that she stepped down. So the
Mhm.
impression we get is that she fought through everyone, that
Mhm.
she had a goal and she was going to achieve it, and she lives in a cutthroat, kill or be killed world, and she made her way up that ladder. And Ashley, like you said, Koichi was potentially her first real victim. She's got to
Mhm.
get that male heir out of the way. And the fact that Rand knew Koichi buys Rand's company, and then Koichi.
Koichi invested in Rand's company. I think this is like very important to start with, because Rand, as we know, he started as a nobody, and he
Mhm.
takes this company and makes it into something. It's noted that he had several notable not customers, clients. He had several notable clients who he maintained once the company had been acquired, which makes me think the Hiraharas might have wanted the clients he had, because otherwise, why else were they wanting to acquire his company in the first place? Um, so I feel like Koichi investing in his company so that he can start up in the first place is the first red flag to me, because
Right.
why is this
Why?
Hirahara investing in this nobody of a man? Because that's what he is at this time. He's still kind of a nobody. He's
Right.
working, he's been in England and he's establishing himself, but the thing that we've been emphasizing is Rand is a nobody who suddenly shoots up and becomes a very big somebody in a very big company. So
Right.
why does Koichi take interest in this, man who we can assume, based on various conversations that are going to come up, is, a very, like, good man who has strong morals and probably a lot of loyalty.
And probably also a bit of naivety.
Yes. Yes. And then, yes, like you said, the company grows, he acquires these really big clients,
Right.
and then Koichi acquires.
And then Koichi acquires it. Rand moves to Asia, and then all of a sudden Rand's entire life is different. He's leaving his wife, he's getting involved with Yui, and we get the impression that there's not much mention of Koichi again.
Hmm. Because nobody's ever mentioned him, as far as we can tell, in the entirety of I Love You. And I think it's also very important that I reiterate this again. Um, Noel is named for very important people in Rand's life. He is Nolan Oliver P. Lochlainn. There is not a Koichi in that name. That
Nope.
is, this is the man who invested in in Rand's company, acquired his company, and really expanded his portfolio and made him a super rich man. But he is not an important friend to Rand.
And we get the impression that this is, when Rand says all the things that he says about people, you know, taking advantage of you, being too trusting, not knowing how to play the game, your honorable traits getting you into
Mhm.
trouble, that this is likely truly the moment that he is referring to, where he befriended Koichi. They were close. Nessa spoke highly of him in their letters,
He's
and
described as like his best friend.
right. And he's the one, like Ashley said, who really skyrocketed Rand up into success, and Rand trusted him enough to sell his company to him and to move to Asia halfway across the world. And then it seems like it was essentially a giant manipulation where he promised Rand all of this, which technically Rand did get, but he had ulterior motives, and as
Hmm.
soon as Rand gets over to Asia, it becomes very clear that this is not what he expected it to be, and that, you know, you dance with the devil and you get burned.
Yep. Because because like it just you have so many questions about it, right? Like there's the why did he even invest in this nobody in the first place thing, but then you have to wonder why did they acquire the company in the first place? Like, I think they probably wanted those notable clients, but it's also like what what was it about this acquisition that was so good and important that they were willing to
Right.
give Rand an executive position? Like that cannot be understated. An executive position,
Right, like
fucking
what
huge.
what did Koichi want from him so badly?
And this is where I just start to feel like this is part of how he ends up with Yui, I think, or
Mhm.
or were they hoping that like he would take a fall for something somehow?
I
Like,
I don't know if they went into it hoping that he would take the fall for something, but we do see that around the time that Rand gets acquiesced and shows up in Asia is when we start to see all of those articles about
yes,
the assaults and the legal issues and the image issues. And I
young
don't think,
Joel especially getting called out by name.
yes. And like, I don't think necessarily there was a plan to have Rand take the fall, but I think that Rand got exposed to things that he shouldn't have and that maybe he
Mhm.
wasn't supposed to. And it very quickly became a game of you are now a part of this. If you want to continue living your comfortable life, which I say comfortable both to mean, the luxuries that he's acquiesced, but also just, living your life, um, you're going to comply with being in this. And I don't know exactly what they would have held over him. But
Mhm.
clearly I guess I shouldn't say clearly, but clearly in my head, um, he was in an unsafe situation, and he went into this deal very naive. He showed up in Asia and witnessed things he shouldn't have, was exposed to a degree of corruption that he likely never could have anticipated, um,
Mhm.
was incredibly vulnerable, was being manipulated, and this is how, through a series of what they wanted, I don't know if it would have been the Hiraharas as a whole, or if Yui kind of came over and was like, "Hey, I've got a way for you to get out
Mhm.
of this." Um, but that's how he starts being seen around Yui, how he ends up marrying Yui, how he gets promoted to CFO and eventually chairman.
Because the whole timeline of this is very closely interconnected. Young Chol is ousted. And then Rand is the person who becomes quote quote temporary CFO. And this causes a scandal because already Rand has been seen with Yui.
Mhm.
And this is notable because this is the founder's daughter. Also, I just
Right.
want to point that out because in my head, the Hirahara company was like older than I had thought it was. But like Kotaro is the founder and Yui
Right.
is the daughter of the founder. So it's not as like old as I thought. Like clearly
Right.
the family must be like old money, but
And I
I
think this
just kind of
plays
assumed
into
that they
the
were.
Yeah, I assume they were older too, and I think this might play into the potential familial connections between the Kims and the Hiraharas, because
Yes.
I'm guessing the Hiraharas were like a new branch of the family that came out of the Kims, and so like this is the founding of the
Mhm.
Hirahara branch of this large old money conglomerate.
Yes. I
Right.
think so too.
Yeah.
Um And so, like, there's obviously this scandal occurring with the new temporary CFO is seen with the founder's daughter, and oh, scandalous. I feel like this plays into the marriage. And
Yep.
this is where we start to question, is this a play from Yui? Is this something that she and Rand planned together and he did not realize was also a trap? We've talked a lot in the past, and it feels still possible now that Yui played a victim kind of role that appealed to Rand's good character and kind of lured him in and under these false security and made him think that she's somebody else entirely, like
But there
in
was
terms
some
of
sort of
personality, that
there
he
was
was rescuing her.
right. We get the impression there was some sort of real partnership, even though I don't think he
Yes.
would have wanted any of that had he not been in this likely unsafe situation with the Hiraharas and Kims. Because again, we see how hard it is for him to leave Nessa.
Hmm.
He didn't just walk up to Yui and see this powerful woman and go, "Bet I'm on board."
Right.
There was something else that happened there, but there was likely a like, okay, this is how it has to be, but we're in this sort of arranged partnership together and we're both going to make it out the other side better.
Hmm.
And that's not what happened. In the same way that he was likely manipulated by Koichi, he was manipulated by Yui. And at that point, whether it was slightly before this or slightly after, because again, like the timing of when he and Yui get together versus when Koichi kind of disappears is a little bit fuzzy. Um, but around here, this is speculation, but well, it's all speculation, but this is more so speculation. Um, Once Yui kind of has her ducks in a row and she sees her path forward, then I think she probably made some sort of move against Koichi. Like you said, we
Hmm.
initially kind of just assumed she killed him.
I
Um,
mean, listen, her own brother being her first blood draw would be so badass. Okay? Like, I know that sounds so wrong, but
down with the patriarchy.
if you are the youngest daughter and your only path forward to have anything to do with the family is to destroy your brother who is the rightful heir, and like, that's metal as fuck, is that not?
No, you're right. Yeah, we immediately assumed that she just killed him, and then we were like, maybe she didn't kill him, but he's incapacitated some way, like
Hmm.
a medical issue, like what we saw happen to the current CFO, so that Kosuke could get the job, or just something that would have made him unfit to be heir, but he's still alive. And then, as you said, Rimiaro threw out the idea of maybe he is incarcerated in some way, which means he could show back up in the story, since we've got people going to jail and such. But
And like,
no,
this is a very classic kimchi thing, right? Like, if a character is mentioned, they're going to show up somewhere. Like, he could show up in terms of, his grave, but I think it would be very interesting if he shows up in prison.
right. But no matter what, he has somehow become inaccessible to the
Hmm.
Hiraharas. He is not able to be heir anymore, likely through Yui's doing.
Yes.
And this whole corporate politics chess game is ultimately what leads to Rand not bringing Nessa with him to Asia, Rand leaving Nessa, Rand marrying Yui, this kind of on and off affairs when Rand takes his likely business trips back home where he keeps going back to her conceiving Noel, him saying that they have to abort Noel, keeping Noel hidden throughout his entire life, Noel and Nessa living in hiding. All of these politics with the way that Rand formulated his relationships is likely built on the Hiraharas were not safe. He was
Hmm.
manipulated by Koichi. He was taken advantage of. He was manipulated again by Yui. Yui put herself in the power position through Rand. and then we end up here, and all of this is left out of the story that we get in episode 262, but we get hints of it through how Rand talks to Shanae and the parallels that we see between Shanae and Yui and Rand and Yui.
Yes. And, to go back to the abortion bit, as I had mentioned, this is why I think it was such a hard decision for him. He's a Mukoyoshi. He knows what it means to have fathered another heir. And by this
Yeah.
point, he knows the kind of person Yui is. He's been trying to parent Kosuke with Yui. He's probably seen some unsavory sides of her already. She likes to show her claws off to Rand. He probably has a very good idea of what kind of person she is, especially if he has any idea of, what has happened to Koichi. Rand asking Nessa to have this abortion wasn't because he, couldn't have this family with her, obviously. It was because he was doing what he could to protect her. And obviously, communication is such a big issue with these characters, and especially with these stupid men who are trying to protect women they care about,
Right.
is when you don't explain to these people why you are asking such hurtful, terrible things of them, they're not going to understand. And maybe Nessa still never would have understood, but we understand. Rand asked Nessa to have an abortion because he knew the sheer existence of that child meant that Nessa's life would be in danger.
Right, both Nessa and that child would never ever be safe,
Yes.
and that is exactly what happened, and that is ultimately what got Nessa killed, and that is ultimately what has hurt Noel so much. And to throw Rand a little bit of a bone, I'm not sure if he deserves it or not, but I'm gonna throw it.
I say
Um,
he does.
I think he might in this scenario. If what we think happened to Rand is true, where he was witness to things that he wasn't supposed to see, and that's how he got so trapped with the Hiraharas, in what world to him would it have been safe to tell Nessa? Because if
Mhm.
information was what got him trapped, he needs to keep her as far away from it as possible to protect her. And that's why he chooses to hurt her so much with
Mhm.
the "I'm marrying Yui, it's this younger woman, I met someone else, it's over," because
She's rich, she's fabulous, she's from that
right,
Hirahara family.
that's an explanation that will hurt her enough that she won't try to come back and keep her far, far away from the truths that will make her unsafe.
And that's the other thing too. Even if it wasn't the information that was keeping her unsafe, it's the fact that he knows Nessa will never truly go away. He
Mhm.
knows her loyalty. No matter how many issues they were having in their marriage, she still came back. No matter how many difficulties she faced, she stayed at his side. He knows that there's nothing he could say to her that would convince her to put her safety above his. He knows he could never explain to her, it's too dangerous for you to be here with me. And that, he's already trapped, because that would be the other thing, right? She'd be like, well, why can't you just leave? How do you explain to her that there is no escaping these people, that trying to leave is going to get his life killed? That's not what I'm trying to say.
Right.
um um, and that, there's nothing he could have said to her that would have sent her to safety. So, right, he hurt her and sent her as far in the opposite direction of him. It would be so much better for her to hate him and feel
And be
disgust at the
safe.
thought of him. Yes, and be safe and maybe move on and go find somebody else. Except, as we unfortunately know,
Divorce was
he's
not legal.
always, huh?
Keep
Oh,
going.
divorce is illegal. And he always made his way back. And here's the really interesting thing about the legality, right? Because here people were questioning, if he's married to Nessa and they never got a divorce, how is he married to Yui? And the answer is, he doesn't have to be.
Right, the
He's
family can just adopt him.
and now he's just legally a Hirahara,
Yeah,
and he's legally the head of the household, and basically he and Yui are having children out of wedlock.
right, and I do think that Rand and Yui are married in Asia, and they probably just didn't mention it to Asia that he has a valid marriage certificate somewhere else, but I also don't think the Hiraharas cared because, like you said, the fact that they adopted him means that he's a Mokuyoshi no matter what.
Because here's my thing. Koichi knew about Nessa.
Mhm.
And like I'm gonna guess he probably knew that they were married. So like I feel like that means the Hirahara family probably knew something.
Yeah,
And like you said, they probably just didn't care because we're
right.
legally adopting you in and that's all that matters.
Yeah, we're legally adopting you in. We can probably get you married here anyway, even if it's not valid, it'll look valid. So who cares?
Exactly.
And
Um oh go on.
oh, I was gonna mention some of the things that are in the chat.
That's what I was gonna
I had a
do.
feeling that was also what you were gonna do. And so
It's in
Remy
Remy
Arla
Arlos. Not called Trashellie for nothing, you guys.
Listen, we're on a wavelength. We share a brain. It's
We
okay.
share a brain. We are the same person.
So Remy Arlo says that they do think Nessa had some idea of what was happening in Asia after Rand returned in her life, as she writes to him about the
Mhm.
world not protecting him, hence why she agreed to the abortion initially. But I don't think Rand let her know the extent of that danger. And yeah, I do agree with that. I think that after the first time that he turned her away, I think the first time he told her nothing. He just
Yes.
hurt her. He just said, I found someone else. It's over. I've moved on. You should too. And then after he kind of kept tangling her into her life and she conceived a child, he told her probably just enough to
Yes.
get her to agree and understand that there is some legitimate danger. It's not just that he doesn't want it, even though he's also being like, I don't want it. Um, and then I think the longer that time went on, the more she found out. But I think that she
Mhm.
never quite knew the full extent. And I think she never quite knew the full extent of the danger to her. Like I think she understood that Rand is playing with some dangerous people, that he has a lot of limitations on himself, that he got involved in things that he didn't understand the extent of, and it's too late to back out now. And she probably more so than him understood from the get-go that high business people are not always the most trustworthy. And so
Mhm.
I think she knows enough to know that. And I think like you said, that ties into her saying, I'm sorry this world could not keep you safe. Um but that it was never enough at the right point in time, you know?
I think she probably definitely learned that Koichi was not the friend that Rand had thought he was.
Mhm.
Um, and that yeah, like the business world was just not the place that he had hoped it would be. Yeah, basically, I agree with what you said. I'm trying not to like repeat what you
Yeah.
said, so yeah. And Leo said. It's interesting. I think much like we will never truly get Alyssa's point of view the way we will get our main trios, we will likely never get to see Rand's entire point of view of what happened, but we will learn to understand him via Noel. Since he's going down a similar trajectory of pushing people away he loves. We know he loves and Rand loved Nessa. And yeah, I agree.
Yep.
We definitely have some points about this yet to get to as well. Um, and I've like I've talked all the time too about how I feel like Kosuke and Noel are going to have to make peace with the ghost of a man, and I think that goes here a little bit too. We are learning Rand by reading through the lines. We are learning Rand by looking at Nana's testimony and going, okay, so what is missing here, and why do I think Rand would have actually made the choices he made, knowing how he felt about Nessa? It's parsing through your knee jerk emotional reactions and going, I'm so fucking pissed at this man. I can't believe he just threw Nessa away and chose Yui like that. And then going, okay, why actually do I think he made these choices? Because obviously this is what Nana is telling me. But Nana doesn't know his choices. She doesn't know his reasons. So why do I think he made this? And I think this is, how we're going to keep learning more of Rand, especially in those parallels, because I do feel like we're going to see Noel and Shanae foil Nessa and Rand in a lot of ways, and that's going to help further illuminate a lot of Rand's choices and what he's done.
Okay, so
Um,
oh, you go.
oh no, I was just gonna say we can move on to those points.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, do you want to start the move on? Because I tried to transition earlier,
Perfect.
but you had more to say.
See, I'm telling you guys. Um, so I do think some of the very important things that we take from this episode are things that are not exactly in the episode, but what they allude to. And that is we have so much parallel fodder in here. Um, I'm looking at my points right now. Hold on.
And you can
Like,
edit out this dead air.
yeah. We see. Oh, actually, before that, I want to just note about the integrity of memory, because I find any and every excuse to talk about Elle's theory on color and memory.
It
Um,
literally makes me like the blush cat emoji whenever you bring it up. I'm like, my theory. It's
but
literally this. It makes me
it's
this.
it's so cute. It stays like so far. It's accurate every single time. Like in our memory, the colors are subdued, but they're still strong. They're not like grayed out or anything. They're just kind of like memory toned colors. So everything's remembered pretty clearly. However, Nessa's eyes are very often missing.
Hmm.
The times that we do see her eyes are in very like poignant moments, usually like when Nessa is leaving Nana for England, or when,
Right.
basically when she's leaving Nana.
When
She
she's
remembers.
leaving and when she's making convicted choices.
Yes, yes. She sees Rand in like great detail. She always remembers Rand perfectly clearly. Um, she hates this man, but she remembers him as he is, which leaves us to assume that like the lack of Nessa's eyes probably has a lot to do with Nana's own guilt and shame not allowing her to fully remember Nessa. But it could also, I think, read a little into the fact that Nana remembers her version of Nessa. She doesn't remember true Nessa because she remembers a fraction of who she is. And I think because, like you said, she remembers Nessa when she's making her most convicted choices, which is Nessa being her most true self in those moments, as opposed to when she's, kind of going along with things or trying to make the best of a situation, or when she's, really
Or when
upset
she
or
comes
something
home
like
and
that.
cries, yeah.
Exactly, yes. And, those moments where, Nana might feel more kind of like guilt or something.
Or when Nana is able to kind of inject her own bias a bit, because even though
Yes.
when Nessa comes home and she's coming home crying, it's genuine, she's coming home in tears based on whatever Ren did to her. Nana is taking it even harsher than
Mhm.
Nessa, and she is projecting some of her own emotions onto her daughter. And so the fact that we don't see Nessa's eyes, other than those few moments where she's making her strong choices and she's like, oh, I'm going with him to England, I'm meeting Rand. Um, and actually, the moment we see her eyes for just a moment, the last time that she comes to Nana's doorstep, well, I guess the second to last, but the last time
Mhm.
really as part of their marriage, when she comes to say, Rand found someone else, it's over. Um, but in the explanation of what happened, we still don't see her eyes. We're like, that's the most that we see the true emotion that
Mhm.
Nessa had, unpeppered by Nana's perception, where she comes home and she's already been crying by the time she reaches the front door. But every
Yes.
other moment, other than those big choices, we don't see her eyes. Even in the arguments, where,
Mhm. Mhm.
Ren's changed, it's fine. Um, and when she's going off to Wales to have the abortion, we never see her eyes because there is some amount of bias injected
Yes.
in the perception of Nessa and Nessa's feelings and her choices.
I think I think it's fascinating, and once again, just how memories portray or how memories inform us of so much when we really start to pay attention to the details, or rather what details are missing. Like, so cleverly done.
Mm-hmm.
But that does bring us to our parallels now. And obviously our parallels are Noel and Shanae and Nessa and Rand, and especially the fact that Noel is just like his father. When Rand first said, "You have my word," I didn't gasp, but I paused right there and it's like, "Oh my god." Like, I guess
Like,
it
oh,
makes
that's where
sense.
it came from.
Right. Like, I guess it makes sense because, like, Nessa would probably have passed that down, and like maybe she never even told him it came from Rand, because I don't think Noel would still do it if he knew that's where it came from. But like maybe it was something that Nessa kept from Rand, and like she probably, like if she was making promises with Noel, she'd probably tell him, "You have my word," and then he picked it up from her. And like to know that it's like something that comes from his father, and the way that we know how much he thinks he's nothing like his father, except, my god,
He's so much like his
it's in
father.
their blood. Oh my gosh, right.
And just
Like,
the cycles and parallels of like the "you have my word" coming from Rand, who at basically every step of the way let Nessa down, and then
mhm,
being passing that along to Noel
who tries his best to like actually honor that.
to make
Ugh,
up.
oof, don't say that. Ugh.
I'm sorry, Leo interjecting with, on a more lighthearted note, he got that cheating spirit in him. Leo!
Listen, Coast got it first, so
I
you're
mean,
not wrong.
we did talk about this in, I think,
The last
Q&A
episode.
last episode where, as much as people give flack to Alyssa for cheating on Noel, Noel's been
Noel's a
pretty,
fucking emotional cheater.
like, real bad.
Isn't it funny though that Noel gave Kosuke his word to stay away from Shanae, and like Shanae's learned this and she's like, "Kosuke's the reason you were doing it?" And I'm like, "Baby girl, he
Mm,
only gave Kosuke his word because he was gonna avoid you anyway, my love." Like,
yeah.
um
But
anyway, but also
similar to his father, he can't stay away.
right, he can't stay away. He pushes people away because he thinks that's the only way that he can protect them. He refuses to actually communicate and talk about the things. He's so afraid of the thing he fears. That's a terrible sentence. I'm so sorry. Like the thing he fears terrifies him so much that he cannot voice it, and he fears that if he expresses it to people, it will, turn and affect them as well. And the thing about how, like, and in actually pushing them away, all they do is put them into harm's way, because when you push people away but you don't tell them why you're pushing them away, you don't tell them from what you're protecting them, you leave them open to the very thing that you're supposed to be protecting them from.
Right, you leave them both hurt and vulnerable,
That too.
and for Shanae and Nessa, we see how both of them were loyal and devoted and headstrong
Hmm.
to a fault and are going to throw themselves back into that situation. They're going to keep trying to reach you. They're going to try to protect you back. And so
Which,
the one
is why they do push these people away, because they're like, "You're not going to listen to me, so I've got to hurt you, and I've got to
right.
shove you away, and I've got to make sure that you never want to come back to me." Like, that's why he even started calling her. I mean, okay, to be fair, he started calling her "you" because she told him that she can't call him by her name with familiarity. But he still did it because he knows it's gonna hurt her. And the
Yeah.
more he continues to do it, the more he's hoping it will like drive her away. And all it's doing is making her like go rush back at him with like extra force and that extra speed. Like, use your
No, literally.
eyes, use your
And that's part
emotional
of the
intelligence.
right, and that's part of, like, the failing part in both of these parallels is that these are people who are supposed to be a partnership and are stronger together, and when the threats come, they separate and
Hmm.
they leave themselves vulnerable.
Like, how can you protect Shanae or Nessa from danger if they don't know what the danger is? Now, this is obviously being foiled because Shanae is figuring out what the danger is, and Rand is urging her to learn to play the game. She doesn't want
Mhm.
to learn to play the game right now. She doesn't understand why Rand is telling her to do this. I think she's going to figure it out. um, and that's going to be like their saving grace. That is their foil, is that Nessa never learned to play the game. Rand never learned to play the game. um
Right.
I
He's
think
only barely
Noel,
playing it now.
right. And I don't, like, we say he's playing the game, but like he's making sacrificial moves, let's be honest. I think Noel intends to play the game. I think that's what's he's going to be doing when he's away for university. He's going to be, getting that education. He's gonna be coming back to prove to everybody how smart and clever and plotsy he is, but I think he's also hoping that he's going to brush shoulders with the right people and that he can learn to play those games a little better. But I think Shanae also is going to be learning to play the game, like, willingly, not just because she's going to get
Yes.
pushed into taking this offer, but she's going to take this offer and go, okay, I'm going to play this, especially because, as we think she's going to get forced into taking this offer because it's something to do with her father, his livelihood or safety. And therefore, if she feels very cornered into taking this role, I think it's going to give her the resolve to be like, you know, if this is what this woman is going to be like, fine, I will learn, I will play, and I
Right.
will fight back.
If I have to do this, I'm gonna do it right, as opposed to Rand who
Yes.
just, he was naive and he got manipulated into the choices that he made, and by the time that he realized he had been played over and over and was already trapped and there was no way out, whereas Shanae at this point does have some amount of choice. As much as he's saying, Yui's never gonna let you go, which is true, she won't, um,
Mm-hmm.
Shanae has some ability to walk away at this point. If she wants to keep being involved with the brothers, she doesn't, but she could she could do what Nessa kind of had the opportunity to do back before Noel was conceived and just walk away from it all and live your life away and just never come back. But through a combination of her relationship with Noel and Kosuke and like you said, likely something that's going to happen with her dad that is going to push her into needing some more resources. She's going to make the active choice to keep herself on the board and learn how to play and be able to actually go up against your opponent. As like Rand said, if you're able to read your opponent and know the game, you have the ability to win.
Hmm. And frankly, I think this is going to force Noel to be teammates with Shanae. Like, whether or not he wants her to be a teammate, whether or not,
Right.
because like obviously he does not want her in the game. That's the thing. But I think it's
Once
going
he
to,
realizes that she's in whether he likes it or not.
yes. Just because, right, like she's in it and there's nothing he can do about it. I think listen, I harp on this so much. He doesn't even know about Kosuke's birthday. He doesn't know why she was really at the formal. He has no idea when Yui's interest in her really began. I think I think that conversation has to happen one day. I don't know if this is the kind of thing that like will ever get discussed in the letters she sends to him. I hope not, because those could be intercepted and that feels like not the right kind of information to put in there. Um, maybe that could be a conversation that happens after he gets out. Because listen, again, this is going to be for the other episodes that we're going to have. I think she's going to convince him. I think just the simple act of actually
It's been
writing
set
to
up
him.
so much.
Right. And I think the thing about convincing him is, I think the simple act of her writing to him relentlessly, even if he doesn't respond, the fact that she would continue to do it with the hopes that he's actually reading it is convincing. Like, she doesn't have to say with words that she likes him and that she cares about him that way. She can show it and she can prove it in so many ways. And as we know, Noel cannot resist her. I literally have that whole post on Tumblr that just like chronicles all of the times that Noel
He
has
cannot resist
tried.
her.
Yeah, like all of the times that he has attempted to resist her and has always crumbled in the end. Like like you said, it's just set up. Like, I don't worry that, prison is going to be a stall in their relationship development. I worry that Nana's gonna die while he's in prison, and that's
Mm.
gonna kick off the anti-hero arc. But that's a conversation for another Tea with Trashellie podcast episode. Tune in next time. Um, but yeah, I think I just really hope that they have that conversation one day, because Noel needs to know, and I'm like, am I just harping on something that's never gonna happen? Like,
No,
I
I think it's very much where we're going.
it's gotta be right. Like, he just needs that, because that's kind of like Noel's chip on his shoulder. He needs to know he is not Yui's only victim. And it's not that Kosuke is the other victim that he doesn't want to feel sorry for. It's that she targets other people. It's that Alyssa was also her victim, even though he doesn't want to see it. He's at
Hmm.
some point in time, he's got to realize Yui has targeted people more than him. And that's going to be part of like him making peace with his father's ghost, is that his father too was a victim and he never escaped. But I believe in Noel and Shanae. I believe that they are going to foil. I believe that they're going to break generational cycles, because
No,
I've got to
I
be
do
an
though.
optimist.
And that's what's set up. That's where
Mhm.
like that's the same way that like we anticipate that Shanae and Simhan are gonna foil the Nana Nessa relationship because it's just been set up. There's I Love You is tragic, but it's not a tragedy where it's as much
Exactly.
about following generational cycles as it is about breaking generational cycles. And we get this setup that Shanae and Noel are very much two people who are going to come out the other end and break their cycles. That it's not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of difficulty along the way. There's going to be a lot that they lose along the way. There's going to be a lot that they have to rebuild at the end. They're going to be fundamentally different people at the end than they were at the beginning, but that they are not going to fall into all of the same pitfalls as their predecessors, and that the ones that they do fall into, they're going to pull themselves out of. And
Mhm.
that's how we learn our lessons, because media for the most part has something to tell us. And we assume part of what Kimchi wants to tell us is always that, like, how do we avoid becoming what made us?
Exactly. Because I was going to say, like, I have this very strong feeling, because I know Kimchi says a lot of the mothers in I Love You are based on mothers that she's actually known.
Hmm.
And I feel like that goes with a lot of these parent cycles, and breaking the cycles is right. Like, it's not about reality in the sense that so often people never break those cycles, because that is true. We know a lot of people get stuck in those cycles and they go on to repeat the cycles that they were raised in, because that's all they know, and it's really hard to break those. Um, like for Kosuke, Kosuke's a really interesting one because we've kind of already seen it happen. He's been raised in this cycle of abuse and he's gone on to perpetuate that cycle of abuse, but he's also coming to realize that what he was doing. Um, where like it's really interesting that we're getting to see him in that cycle and breaking the cycle as it's already happened. Um, Whereas, right, I feel like for a lot of the others is how do you break those cycles? How do you escape from that? Like what is your way of not repeating the past?
Mhm.
And part of it is I feel like this is like really on the nose, but like for Noel, it's literally like learning from the past. Read the fucking letters.
Right. Like, learning from the past and, like, just the learning what you need and how to honor your own needs and honor your own
Mhm.
wants,
Yes.
but also know when to pull back.
And respect the people in your life. Let them love you.
And again, like, that comes back to I love you, like, ultimately, it is very much actually about love. It's not about a love triangle, it's not about romance, but it is about the way that people love each other and the things that that love allows you to do, the way that love lifts you up, and the ways that that love can kind of put up barriers and
Mhm.
can hold you back and hurt you. And
We see
so
that even with Minhyuk. We see that with
right.
Shinhei. We see that with Simhan. And this is kind of why I do try to pick sometimes at things that we idealize in terms of love that can often be very hurtful. Which is why, like I kind of point out those things about, like a selfless mother's love is, seen as like this very beautiful and incredible thing, but we have to acknowledge that a selfless mother's love impacts the mother, It's like and this is kind of like that thing with how fandom has viewed Nessa for a long time and why I'm really glad that we're starting to get more of this insight and we can see how much more there is to her even though we're reading between the lines to see it. Is that when we boil somebody down to just her role as a mother and just her role as a daughter, it loses so much of who she herself really was.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of talked about this in the server, is how like if somebody recalls you and they only recall you in terms of a service that you played to them, what does that say about your relationship with that person? What does that say about their relationship with you? Like if you die, like suddenly, like if I die and a week from now, what are people going to say about me at my funeral? I'm not a mom, so this isn't, it doesn't work with me an analogy, but it's like, like you go you go to a stranger's funeral and you want to learn about them from the eulogies. Are you actually going to learn about them or are you going to learn about who they were to others?
Who
Um,
are you beyond the roles that you play?
yes. And I think about this all the time in terms of mothers because you know, being a good and dutiful wife and mother is often a role that women are pigeoned into. That it feels like, are we forgetting all of the other roles that this person could have been? Like, and that just goes back to Nessa haunting the narrative. I'm never going to know what other hobbies did she have. Like, yeah, she helped Nana in the bike shop. Did she love
Right,
it?
but what else did she like?
Right. Like, what else did she like? What other hobbies did she have? Did she like reading? Was she into photography? Did she like music? Did she want to learn to make music? Were there things that she yearned to learn and she never got the opportunity because she was so busy holding space in her life for others? Like
And it's like, we
that,
know that she had a lot of life in her because the impression of her that we get from the people around her is that there was so much to her, but we don't know any of it.
right? And I think that's how she has shot to the top of my characters list right now, is like I'm so fascinated by her in the sense of the things that we will never know about her. Oh yeah, now let me look at the chat.
Oh, one thing that it's a little far back, but one thing that I did really like was when we were talking about love and I love you, Rimiara added and self-love too. And this ties in with
Yes.
what we're talking about with Nessa here. We're like, it's the love that you give and the love that you receive, and in both the positives and the negatives, the way that it plays into our life, but also the way that we honor who we ourselves are and love ourselves. And
Mhm.
we see that a lot of the times when our characters truly fall into their pitfalls, it's that lack of ability to love themselves and honor who they themselves are and what they themselves want. And then that also creates a lot of our issues in extending the love that we have to other people and receiving love healthily from other people.
Right. And obviously we see that a lot in Shanae, and we're going to see a lot of that in Kosuke. Noel is a little more difficult, but we'll get there, I think. We'll get there. Um, Leo is talking about the two rooks in the end game chessboard and how she's convinced that's Taku working together. I still don't know anything about chess, so I just roll with what you guys say. And I'm like, I'm nodding along. I believe you guys. I wish I could contribute more to that because I feel like, I mean, obviously that's like such an important part to the theorizing, but I'm just like, that's right, guys, you got this. Yeah, I really liked this episode. I, like you said way earlier, I did not think we would be getting half of this at this time. I really
No.
thought she was gonna make us wait for like time skip to get a whole bunch of this. Like, and
And it
again, we've
tells us so
waited,
much.
right. We've waited literally like 2 years almost for the hiatus. And then we've just been inundated with so many answers and answers to questions we didn't even ask.
Right.
And then like Koichi is moderating us.
So
Um
we set a tentative end time for this episode because usually after the episode we hang around and we keep chatting, which for
mhm.
anyone who's not in our Discord who just generally likes to yap with us or hear from us or yap with the community, we do after we finish recording, we do sit around and just chat. You know, sometimes it's random personal stuff. Sometimes it's I love you stuff. Sometimes it's stuff we've talked about before that we just like to talk about again. But we do
Mhm.
that. And one of our mini mods just came in and told us that that's supposed to start in 25 minutes.
Important note is during our of you welcome back party, this particular mini mod, Ayabe, um, was the only mini mod who kept us on schedule because we kept going over on events without her around. So it's um, to our attending chat. I did set that up as a separate event just because we've got a lot of new members who are kind of newer to Tea with Trashellie. So it's kind of there to remind you guys that afterwards we just kind of roll right into what we call the after party. It's more to let you guys know that after Tea with Trashellie ends, you don't have to leave. You can just stay here and hang out with us. In the future, I'm going to set these events up to just say Tea with Trashellie and I after party, but I wanted to have it separate this time just so that you guys, are aware that it follows. Um, Remy Arlo says, I think Kim said we'll see more Rand and Yui's backstory throughout Kosuke's arc. Since we're at that point of story, I'm excited to see more. I would love to see more of that,
Oh, yeah.
especially like through Kosuke's backstory, especially Rand and Yui, and just like I'm just dying to know how things play out. I feel like I'm pretty confident in what Elle and I have so far, but obviously we're missing a lot of details. Like it's easy to say I think, Rand probably got pressured into something. Like, I think it's easy to call it an arrangement in the sense that, you know, you're slapping a bow on something awful and calling it a gift, you know? Especially because, like, we had that scandal with Yui and Rand. Rand's, you know, in this temporary position, seen with, you know, the founder's daughter. It just feels like the kind of thing where we've got to make this scandal go away. We've got to do something about it. And Rand gets pushed into something that, like, he doesn't exactly want, but it's like, if you don't do this, bad things happen kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm just dying to. And here's the thing, right? Kimchi gives us all of these answers, but what does she do? Leave us with so many more questions. The rook is sometimes considered the second most powerful piece. Dang. I feel like that means the rook is very fitting for Shanae and Noel. What if I start referring to Kosuke as Coco?
What?
And, like, my mouth just wanted to, like, call him Coco, and, like, nah, we can't do that. And it was like, what if?
And the other thing about the rooks, in addition to the specific movement Leo was talking about and them sometimes being considered the second strongest piece, they're specifically, as I've generally heard, I don't actually know chess all that well, but um, that
I don't
when
know.
you
This is what I heard.
this is what I heard. Um, and actually, for that matter, we do have an analysis of the endgame chessboard by a like family friend of, I believe it was Remy Arlo, who really
It's
knows what they're
always Remy
doing.
Arlo.
Yeah, who really knows what they're doing as far as chess. So that is in our Discord if anyone wants to join and take a look at it. But that the rooks, when the two rooks work together, they're specifically a lot stronger and a really, really strong unit as a pair. Where like a single rook isn't that strong, but when you pair them together and they move on as a pair, that's when they get super strong, which makes a lot of sense for that to be Shanae and Noel.
We make a great team.
Exactly.
You hear that, Noel? Get your shit together. A real power couple. Will you be my partner? I feel like Noel did not realize what he was asking when he asked that.
Right, Leo, we do know that they're safer when they're together. And again, this all ties into like they need to be a partner to break the cycle and to come out and win.
Which is like everything we've been saying for so long, too, is like, it's why they have to have those conversations. It's why they need to be able to be that team. They will be so much stronger and therefore safer.
Mhm. And Rin just said something that they were like, "This is off topic," and then they're like, "Actually, wait, no, it's not." And I agree with you, Rin, it's not. Um, they said, "I feel like a lot of I Love You centers around the character's resilience, but I love that it isn't shown in the Western sort of way where you're supposed to work hard and earn things for yourself. Having a support system or community is so essential for human survival, and I think it's overlooked so much. It means a lot to me that the characters are strongest when they are working together because sometimes that's what you need to survive in this world." And I think that's actually basically exactly the contrast that we get between Rand and his, his next generation, where he fell into these traps because he was pulling himself up by his bootstraps. He was leaving the people who cared about him behind to do it and being like, oh, when I can provide for you, we'll come together and I'll be resilient so that you don't have to. And it led him so far astray in situations he couldn't get himself out of. And then we see this really strongly contrast. Oh, we also see that with Alyssa, they're like, I'll endure and eventually I'll come out the other side. And I'll pull myself up by my bootstraps through society until it's safe enough for me to interact with other people. Whereas we see that so strongly contrasted with people like Shanae and Noel, where we anticipate and we see that they're so much stronger when they're working together with the people that they care about, when they have that support system, that support system makes the difference in them being able to be rounded people and be themselves and succeed in the world versus become someone like Yui or someone like Rand who has lost so much of what makes them human and has lost so much of themselves and what they want and lost and don't really have anyone in their lives anymore who care about them. And it's really, again, like we said, like I Love You is about love and it's about community and it's about support, and the way that that factors into how we lead our lives and how we become successful and how we actualize ourselves.
I think it's very important to remember that I Love You is, in fact, a very anti capitalist story. And capitalism is what instills the myself first kind of methodology. Capitalism is what says that you take care of you, because capitalism is the alleged antithesis to socialism. And socialism is where you get these concepts of community and taking care of each other and looking out for one another. Um, Capitalism is what denies community. Capitalism is what says that you should only look out for you, yourself, that you're wasting your resources, you're wasting your energy if you are trying to take care of others. Um, it also tries to tell you that if you are helping others, it means you're aiding them in trying to take what is yours and trying to, like quote, quote, catch up to you. The reason why community works so well is because you're going against capitalism. Capitalism is the oppressor in I Love You. It is the reason why so many people struggle in the first place in this story. And like even when you look at Rand, whose lofty goals were trying to become somebody big and make something of himself, so much of that was still rooted in capitalism, because he was led to believe that if he had everything he could ever want for, he would never struggle in his life. And in doing so, he was so isolated that he didn't have anybody to rely on. He didn't have anybody to, like lean on. He had nobody who could help him. So right, like it is that community, it is that friendship, it is having a group of people who you can be with and help each other. And right, like Rin was saying she loves seeing Shanae learn how to be a part of a group over the course of the story. We have watched Shanae go from being really, she wasn't in a good place when we meet her, and now that she's
No.
opening up to more people, she's learning how to rely on people, to lean on people, to take favors from people. She's doing so much better. She's improving in so many ways because she knows now she doesn't have to struggle and bear everything alone. Like you
And
said,
that
Alyssa is on that opposite side where she's not doing that and she struggles so much because who can she open up to? Who can she rely on? She can only rely on herself, and it doesn't help. It's, metaphorically it makes her sick, doesn't it?
it does. And it really like it's ultimately really summed up so simply and succinctly in the mid-season recap where Shanae just goes, I'm starting to feel okay again after thinking
Mhm.
about all of these people who entered her life and who she started being able to open up to.
Like, I Love You is straight up the fuck capitalism story. And we see this in interpersonal relationships and the emphasis on the importance of community and being together. And right, why Shanae and Noel need to learn to fight together, and why they're eventually going to have to include Kosuke in that fight. The reason that Team Black needs to be a full and proper team. Like if you think about it, Team White isn't really a team. It's like Queen Yui and a whole bunch of like, you
Worker
know,
bees.
yeah, her pawns and her, like pieces that she moves around as she sees fit, but they're not a team. Whereas Team Black operates, as a team. We even see it with Rand where he has come to learn that you do have to rely on people. He's more cautious about it, but when it comes to Noel's trial, he reaches out to Shanae. He knows that she's trustworthy, but he also knows that he needs to be able to rely on somebody to assist with Shanae's case. Leo pointed out that Eugene even reins in Meg and Wright. Like Meg is becoming part of this team, part of this community. I'm actually really excited to see Meg become more of this kind of community. Like not just the Meg Eugene duo, but I want to see her kind of integrate into that group a little more.
I Love You is ultimately anti-capitalism, pro-community and love.
Mhm. And like it makes sense with, if you ever join the Patreon, you can read the kind of chat and kind of get a sense that Kimchi is a person who values these kinds of things.
And again, that comes back to like our authors have a message. Media has a
Mhm.
message. And these are themes that Kimchi is really strongly infusing throughout her narrative and her characters.
Mhm. Leo says Kim long ago hinted at Meg and Shanae friendship. I really want that. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I feel like Meg would benefit from it so much, especially with the way that Shanae has grown and started really developing her own self-love journey, and now that Meg is really on that journey for herself.
Meg is ready for some strong female friends.
Also, like, not to go there, but Meg and Shanae becoming friends while Alyssa is busy
I
isolating
know.
herself.
I wasn't gonna say
Ugh.
it.
Somebody had to,
You
so
knew I was thinking
listen.
it, and I wasn't gonna go there.
That one, that hurts a little. Alyssa, you could take that as a sign, babe. I know you won't, but you could.
No.
And I want you to. Listen to me, Alyssa.
And again, like Alyssa's the one who, at the end of all this, the most so is not going to escape her cycle, is not going to come out the other side, is not going to be living a life that she's happy with. And it's going to be because she can't accept herself and she can't accept love and community around her. And she can't form those partnerships because she can't open up. And it's
I want to
such a
fight her
stark,
dad.
I know. And it creates such a clear and stark contrast to where the rest of the cast is going that it really just hammers in that these are the themes that Kimchi is putting down for us to pick up.
I just I just want an epilogue that tells me one day Alyssa's okay. That's all. That's all I could hope for. With the way things are going. Like, just tell me Alyssa got herself into therapy and she's learning to love. What?
Ah!
Listen!
For those of you who are audio only and not watching our wonderful new editions of the chat scroll, our very own podcast editor just sent us a graphic with a box that says any conversation on the I Love You server with an arrow to another box that says Colissa cry time.
It's very important that you guys know that Elle and I have names in the Discord server. Elle is L parentheses number 2 Calissa Crier, and I am Trashellie parentheses number 1 Calissa Crier. So like this is a very targeted attack.
We have a brand, okay?
We just like to cry about tragic characters, okay? We cry
That
about Ressa too.
I was about to say that's why when the Ressa episode dropped, we dropped everything and we're like surprised tea with Trashellie, even though it got postponed. But we were like surprised tea with Trashellie. We're talking about Ressa.
And I still choked up in this one. Calissa team. I'm not gonna lie, we could do it. We could pull it off. Like, I'm always happy talking about them. I know I know Elle calls herself Alyssa's mom, but I secretly call myself Alyssa's other mom. It's just that journey I had on Tumblr where like I started getting really into analyzing Kosuke and Alyssa, and it's like I think
I
I think I'm really liking Alyssa.
I just once we got the Christmas arc and I understood a little bit of what's going on internally for Alyssa, I just started to see like truthfully, I started to see so much of myself in her, and I was like, "Wait, no, my beautiful baby girl, it's okay."
Right? Like I don't know, yeah. Like I was already really enjoying her by then, and when we were getting that the really long flashback that people hated, I was like, no wait, I'm actually really enjoying this. Like learning that Alyssa was a little science nerd and she hated K-pop
No,
just sealed so much for me.
not the
And
nightmare fuel clock.
I was like, that's it. Alyssa's in my pocket forever now.
I know,
I love our nightmare fuel. We're
and
gonna
it's like,
have to update this one day.
I know. I've thought about like, do we need new clocks? For those of you not in the Discord, a while ago I made two clock graphics. One says cry about and one says nightmare fuel, and all the clock wedges are things that we cry about routinely or things that we scream about routinely.
To
Um,
be fair, people are still very freaked out by a 8, 9, the Bomby banners.
they're still relevant.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got
Listen,
a
Ren, that
culture.
is my favorite banner. I'm not going to like say things by name because I want people to join the server.
We promise it's a fun time.
It's a great time.
All thousand something of our members are here of their own free will. They joined and they stayed.
Enjoy. Just like Nessa.
Oh no.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I do the things I do.
On that note, do we feel like we've concluded our points for the night?
Yeah, I think we've covered everything pretty well.
I think so too. Thank you to everyone for joining us with our third recording back in season 2 of I Love You Too with Trashellie, not sponsored by Yui Hirahara, and our first normal kind of outlined episode, considering that our previous two upon returning were Q&As. We do intend to still continue our Q&As, like we said at the end of Q&A 2, we've got a lot more questions, but now that I Love You is back, we have some fodder to talk about in normal style Trashellie episodes, so we're going to be kind of interspersing the rest of our Q&A episodes with regular episodes. We'll get to all of the questions eventually, but we also want to make sure that we touch on the content of the comic in a timely fashion for when it's released. So we hope you guys are really enjoying the kind of new additions that we've made, the scrolling chat, the images that are now in the videos, the more balanced audio from an editor who actually knows what they're doing.
Thank you, Ren.
Thank you, Rin. Some of the new artwork by Kiko, who keeps making artwork for us. And we just hope that you're having a good time with us being back. We're really excited to be back. And thank
Really
you.
excited about these recent episodes that I'm looking forward to discussing in detail.
All right. And that's a wrap.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.